Hey, I'm Chris Farrell, Director of Investigations and Research with Judicial Watch, and I'm very pleased today to be able to have a Skype interview with our friend and colleague, Ami Horowitz, who's back from Mexico, where he conducted his own investigation of the caravan. I love the word caravan. I think it's a misnomer, but it's this sort of wave of humanity heading towards our southern border. Ami, thanks for joining us. We really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us today.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
That's great. Hey, listen, about a month ago, we ran down to Guatemala. We got the front end of the caravan as it was heading towards you. And we interviewed folks on the ground there, the same charming young men, a lot of them, of course, in the 90th percentile young guys. Saw both the humanity of it, kind of the scary humanitarian angle of this thing, but also saw some less savory aspects of the caravan with respect to some of the guys moving within it. And then we went all the way up to the president of Guatemala. We talked to the Minister of Defense and others. And then I was very pleased to see your reporting covered on Fox News of your experiences in Mexico. And so I want to take time today to kind of maybe line some stuff up, do some synchronization or some sort of comparison between our experiences in Guatemala, your experience in Mexico, and have our viewers understand really the scope and scale of this enormous, part of it's, in my opinion, political publicity stunt, part of it's humanitarian crisis, part of it's criminality. There are a lot of facets to this thing. So let me just kick off with kind of an open-ended question with you. What's your assessment? How do you describe or categorize what you saw in Mexico?
Yeah, that is an open-ended question. No, I think caravan actually describes it very aptly, to be honest, because when you think of caravan, what you envision is like just this parade of trucks and buses and cars, and that's exactly really what it is.
Right.
And it is a mess of humanity. It's thousands upon thousands of people. I found so many things, and there's so many layers to this onion. It's hard to know where to really begin. I think the first place to begin is what I call the complicity of the mainstream media into pushing what is a false narrative onto what is actually happening on the ground. And what I mean by that is there are if you watch, CNN or MSNBC or the BBC or read the New York Times, the Washington Post, you see these images, these videos, and they're all framed in a certain way, both literally framed, but with the camera, and also narratively framed. And what you see with the framing, the literal framing, is every time you look at an image of the caravan, what do you see? You see it's just full of women and children.
Right.
And there are women and children, but there's a tiny percentage. I estimated between 90 and 95% are men.
That was our estimation as well then in Guatemala. Yeah.
So when people use the word fake news, let's define terms. We're not saying that the caravan, fake news is, the left tries to say what fake news is describing things that don't exist at all. And that's not really what fake news is. It's a little more nuanced than that. What I see as fake news, and what I call fake news, is when you're clearly, as a journalist, you are trying to create a certain narrative and bias that fits a political agenda, and you will ignore many of the relevant facts on the ground to pigeonhole this into your agenda. That's exactly what's happening with this caravan. First of all, it's mostly men. Second of all, this thing was not a wellspring organically from the ground where thousands of people at one time said, hey guys, let's all just make it. Let's just push our way into the United States. This is a highly organized, created agenda that was created to push a certain political agenda. And what I found was this group called Pueblos Sin Fronteras on the ground, hundreds of workers organizing this thing. And yet the reality is this effort costs millions of dollars. I estimated almost $800,000 just in water costs, never mind the food and the transportation and the medical equipment and all the services involved. And it's a concerted effort by a number of groups, spearheaded by Pueblos Sin Fronteras, to essentially push this agenda, which is they want to degrade U.S. security. They want to essentially degrade U.S. sovereignty and to create this manufactured crisis, which they did, in order to push this agenda. And that's exactly what they've created, and that's exactly what they've accomplished.
What were you most surprised about once you got on the ground in Mexico? What caught you as a holy cow? I never realized it was going to be either this way or this bad, or was there one thing that stuck out?
Yeah, a lot of things I saw I suspected going in because I've had some experience. I spent some time with the migrants from Syria to Europe.
Right.
I was embedded with them as well. And I saw a lot of the same, it's the same movie I saw before.
Yeah.
I would say the major thing that surprised me was the high level of organization. For example, you're led to believe that they walked the majority of this thing. And they walked portions of it, but the vast majority of it was they had chartered these almost luxury tour buses, just dozens of them. And they're just all lined up. And they all load up into this thing, and they take it from point A to point B. And point B is our new from their former campsite, their newer campsite.
Right.
They can chill until the next day. It was incredible to me to see just like I said, when I said the word caravan, it did evoke to me what a caravan was. Just dozens of these buses and trucks loaded up with people. They didn't come from nothing. It wasn't manna from heaven. This was highly organized, chartered, and that's how they got this caravan. Whatever it is, 1,000 miles it took to cross Mexico. Also was shocked to see that the Mexican government don't want these people to stay there. The Mexican government is looking at these people to get out of Mexico and into America. So what they had was the caravan throughout the entire time I was there had police escorts that were taking them from place to place. Kind of throughout the trucks and the buses taking them. I would say also what was surprising to me, well, two more things. Actually, more than two things. Well, I'll mention two more things. First of all, mobile hospitals, children's services. The UN is highly involved in getting them the caravan through. It was incredible the degree of services that were involved there.
You said UN. I just want to pause for a second.
Yeah.
Do you know what particular entities or what offices of the UN were involved?
There's a whole number of them. Most prominently was the UN High Commission for Refugees,
right?
UNHCR,
Yep.
which is the organization, and UNICEF. Those are the two most highly profile and the organizations that were largely involved in this thing. That was incredible. And I would say the other thing that was incredible to me, I was not expecting, was what they're trying to do is. All these groups, and the UN is complicit in this as well, they want these people to be able to be granted asylum in the U.S. So what they're doing is they're creating these, first of all, they're training them how to speak to the press, right? And this is on camera they admitted this to me.
Yeah.
They're training them what words to use to the press so that they can make them look as sympathetic as possible. And also that they're creating these PowerPoint presentations on exactly what to say to the U.S. authorities when they reach the border in order to increase their ability to claim asylum. Just incredibly organized.
Those are disturbing facts. Just to sort of compare and contrast, what I think is interesting is, we'd interviewed Guatemalan senior officials, from the president, the minister of defense, their intelligence chief. They had actually gotten to the point where they had turned around about 5,000 Hondurans and sent them back to Honduras via bus. Was there any sort of effort on the part of Mexican authorities to say, hey, look, you need to reconsider what you're doing. We need to get you back home. This is not the way to go. Was there any sort of return or any effort on the part of Mexican or even these other nonprofit groups to give people a way out? Or once they were on this track, they were going all the way?
It was a one-way trip.
Interesting.
Interesting.
Yeah, the other
you said that a lot of them did turn back.
Yeah, they quit.
A lot of them said, because listen, what's happening at the end, these poor people, and to give some context, and to be totally honest and frank, listen, if I were a poor Honduran, would I want to get the hell out of Dodge and go to Mexico and go to the U.S.? Of course I would.
Sure.
Of course I would. No, of course. I have a lot of empathy and sympathy for their plight. There's no question about it. Life is not easy for them in Honduras.
Yeah.
But the question we have to ask is, there are billions of people who are in a tough situation, literally billions around the world.
I agree.
Do we have a moral responsibility to take every single one in? No, because if we did, it'd be the end of the U.S. as we know it. Which also goes back to again, and I'll keep getting back to this because it's so important. It goes back to this notion of the disingenuous nature of the reporting. when you listen to the reporting on this thing, all you hear from them is they're trying to escape violence, daily threat. They're dying left and right. It's extraordinarily dangerous. The word you hear over and over: violence, danger. When I asked these people, I started every interview, and I interviewed dozens of them, dozens of the migrants.
Right.
The very same question: why are you coming to America? And not a single person said violence. Not a single person.
And that is confirmed with everything that we did. All of our reporting in Guatemala, we asked them the same question, and they all said it was all economic. It was job driven. And then when someone would say, "Oh yeah," and this was like talking points response. Well, we're also fleeing violence, and we'd say, "Well, if things are so bad, did you leave anybody back home?"
Why are wives and children still in Honduras?
Correct.
And by the way, same exact story with the migrants to Europe from Syria. Right? They were not fleeing, as again, same narrative. They weren't fleeing the fires of Syria. They were safe in refugee camps in Turkey and in Jordan. Life was not great for them. They were looking for an upgrade in life. Again, yes. I don't hold that against them. But we have to be able to solidify and hold on to our laws as well, right? That's why we have borders. That's why we have sovereignty as a nation. So, yeah, same story.
So, I would press the point. I say, well, why would you leave the most vulnerable members of your family home in these horrible conditions of violence and poverty? And then you get this long silence and kind of a deadpan stare because there was no reasonable explanation as to why anyone would do that for anybody that they cared about.
That's exactly what I found. It's exactly what I found. And again, this is being pushed in a partnership, informal or formal, I don't know, between the organizers
yes.
of this caravan, which of course exist, Pueblos Sin Fronteras, People Without Borders, the name says it all.
Yeah.
Being spearheading this drive, and the media, which is reporting on it.
And, in Guatemala, the president and the minister of defense were quite emphatic. They said that they believed that the organizers, the various groups and affiliates, because it's sort of loosely knit, but they're all cooperating, that they wanted to have a criminal investigation of them because they felt that the organizers were deliberately endangering people, sort of, dupes, people that were kind of suckered into this, were put into grave danger, not really understanding the consequences and sort of the unanticipated problems that would come up. And at the same time, that danger that they were placed in, there had to be some kind of accountability. You can't get away with doing that, and then everyone just kind of walks away. So they wanted to have a criminal investigation of these people, and I think it's a good idea.
They're putting tens of thousands of people's lives at risk.
Yep. Because
they're trying to push a certain an anti-U.S. political agenda, which is what it is. Let's not play with words. And these people are just their tool to accomplish that political goal. And it's shameful. It's shameful that they would uproot thousands and thousands of people, move them thousands of miles in order to push a certain political agenda. It's shameful. That's really shameful.
Did you have any sort of interaction with or Mexican authorities, whether they were police or municipal authorities or, refugee immigration type folks? Did you have any interaction with them?
No, not the Mexicans. I did have a very interesting conversation with the head of the UN refugees, the High Commission refugees on the ground.
Really?
We had a very interesting phone call, which is in the video, where she admits that, first of all, they've been involved with this from the beginning. Right? She was proud to say that they were involved from day one.
That's outrageous.
Outrageous. And when I said to her, are you doing this also because you're looking to kind of poke Trump in the eye? She laughed and said, yeah, sure. That was a response to my question on whether or not she was looking at this to stick it into our president.
I mean, stop the presses. I mean, there's the headline. I mean, this is.
The New York Times was all over that. New York Times calling you
a thundering silence. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
Unbelievable. Before we wrap up, anything that we've missed, anything you really want to kind of drive home and say, hey, look, no one's looking at this, but besides this revelation on the UN High Commissioner laughing at trying to embarrass President Trump?
Yeah, no, I think we covered the important points. When I did ask them, and I said, hey, looking at it from the perspective of America, do you think that the U.S. should take in any? This is what I'm asking the people on the ground, not the migrants, not the organizers. Do you think America should take anybody in who wants to come to America? And they looked at me like, remember, these are people coming from essentially socialist countries. And they looked at me like I had two heads. And they said, of course, we need. If we need, you should give.
Yeah, there's a sense of entitlement, definitely.
It's a massive sense of, and this is a larger issue when it comes to anybody who comes from a non-capitalist society. But that's what it comes down to, is an incredible amount of entitlement, because that's what they're born with. It's not, I'm not trying to, cast aspersions on their moral fiber. It reminded me of when I was in Venezuela. I was in Caracas last year. One of the most frankly, and I've been in very dangerous places, one of the most dangerous places I've ever been to in my life.
Yeah. And
I thought these guys would have learned a lesson, right? They learned the lesson of the ills of socialism. And I said to them, what do you guys want? Okay, this is what Maduro is doing to you people. What do you want? They go, we want somebody who will take care of us better. And it was, I was like, you learned the exact wrong lesson.
Exactly.
Into your lives. But the same thing could be said with these people as well. They're brought up with a sense of, hey, the government will take care of our needs. Well, guess what? The U.S. is richer and bigger. They can take care of our needs even better.
Right.
And that's not to say these people wouldn't be here and they wouldn't work hard. I'm not trying to say that either. But there's no question that they are looking for a country to take care of them better.
Yeah, there's just a different ethic involved in all of this.
No question about it. Yeah. And I think that we need I think what's also lost upon this is, why is the left, right? Why is the mainstream media pushing this agenda? I think, frankly, it's a similar agenda, unfortunately, that the left finds borders obnoxious and gates and walls obnoxious and immoral. And I think that they would also ultimately, if you ask, I'm not talking about Democrats necessarily, but leftists. And by the way, there are a lot of the Democrats who were elected in this midterm would certainly count among the leftists. And ask them, hey, Ocasio-Cortez, I'm not sure how smart enough to truly understand the implication, but if you asked her, hey, should we have a free flow of people? Should anybody who needs come to the U.S.? Her answer would probably be yes.
I agree with your assessment 100%. It's a philosophical thing. It's an ideological thing that really drives them, and it doesn't take account of the facts, of the law, of just economics 101. It's a reckless position.
That's exactly right. You're 100% right.
Listen, hats off to some really first-class reporting, some great stuff, important newsworthy material that doesn't get enough attention, and I hope you get even more. And we really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us.
From your lips to God's ears.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.